Zola came home to Luanda Hills tired, hungry, and just wanting a quiet evening. But the moment she opened her front door, her heart dropped. Her sister Kessia was sitting right on her couch, legs crossed, remote in hand, acting like she owned the place. Bags were on the floor, shoes in the hallway. The whole house already looked taken. Before Zola could even ask what was going on, Kessia looked up with a smirk and said, "Oh good, you're here. Pack your things. The family decided this house belongs to me now." Zola just stood there, stunned. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. Kessia shrugged like it was nothing. "You don't need this place. You do. So leave." Zola didn't shout. She didn't argue. She simply turned around and walked to her bedroom. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was steady. She went straight to the top shelf of her closet, pulled down the locked file box she kept hidden, and carried it back to the living room. Kessia rolled her eyes. "What is that supposed to be?" Zola placed the box on the table, opened it, and pulled out the original deed. Her deed, with her full name written in bold ink. No shared ownership. No family ties. Just Zola. She slid it across the table. Kessia's confidence vanished instantly. Her face went pale, her mouth opening and closing with no words coming out. She looked at the paper, then at Zola, and suddenly the room felt painfully quiet. "This house," Zola said softly, "belongs to me. Only me." Kessia's voice cracked. But they said. "They were wrong," Zola replied. And for the first time that day, Zola watched her sister shrink, realizing she had no power here. Not anymore. Ebony had been working late all week, exhausted but looking forward to coming home to Maconda Estate, her safe space. But the moment she opened the gate, she knew something was wrong. Her car hadn't even stopped fully when she noticed the curtains moved differently, furniture shifted, and her favorite plants were pushed to the corner. She stepped inside, heart sinking, and froze. Her sister Talika was sitting on the couch, legs stretched out, scrolling through her phone. Clothes were scattered across the floor, some in the trash. Even the Wi-Fi connection refused to work on Ebony's phone. Talika looked up with a smug grin. "Oh, you're back," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You don't live here anymore. The family decided this house is mine now." Ebony blinked, trying to steady herself. Her mind raced, anger, disbelief, hurt, but she didn't yell. She didn't throw things. She took a deep breath and stepped inside fully, her eyes calmly meeting Talika's. "Really?" she asked softly. Talika smirked and waved a hand. "Everything is in place. I've already started moving in. You're just gone." Ebony's fingers twitched, but she stayed calm. She walked past the chaos, past the thrown-away clothes and tipped-over cushions, and went straight to her desk in the corner. She opened the drawer and pulled out a thick envelope, her hand steady now, her chest rising with a quiet power. Inside was the mortgage contract, paid off entirely by her, years of hard work, late nights and sacrifices. She walked back into the living room, Talika's grin faltering as she saw the envelope in Ebony's hands. Ebony laid it on the table with deliberate calm and looked her sister straight in the eyes. "Actually," she said slowly, letting each word hit, "I do live here. This house is mine. All mine. Paid for by me, in my name with my effort. Not anyone else's." Talika's face went pale, her confidence crumbling. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The reality hit her hard. She had no claim, no right, no power here. Ebony's calm presence filled the room like sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. Ebony took a deep breath, smiled softly and said, "Maybe next time, think twice before taking what isn't yours." Talika stood frozen, realizing she had underestimated her sister. For the first time, Ebony felt the weight lift. The house that was hers in every sense of the word was finally secure, and Talika's arrogance lay in ruins before her. Samaya had just finished a long day at work and was looking forward to relaxing at home in Dala Springs. But as she turned the corner onto her street, she noticed music blasting, lights flashing, and cars parked all over her driveway. Her heart sank. Something was definitely wrong. When she stepped through the front door, she froze. Her living room had been transformed into a party hall. Streamers hung from the ceiling, snacks were laid out on her kitchen counter, and her friends and neighbors were milling around, laughing and chatting. And right in the middle of it all, standing proudly like she owned the place, was her sister Ruva. "Oh, Samaya, you're here," Ruva said loudly, grinning at the crowd. "I didn't wait for you. I decided to throw a little party in my house. Actually, this house is mine." Samaya's jaw tightened, and the room seemed to close in around her. Ruva turned to the guests, spreading her arms wide. "See? Samaya hasn't done a thing. She contributed nothing. I've always handled everything here." The words stung, but Samaya refused to let anger take over. She walked slowly past the crowd, past the laughter and the chatter, straight to her office. Her fingers shook slightly, but her mind was steady. She opened the top drawer of her desk, pulled out a crisp envelope, and carried it back to the living room. The crowd quieted, sensing the tension in the air. Samaya placed the notarized purchase agreement on the table. She opened it and read aloud, her voice calm but firm. "This house belongs to Samaya Adebayo. Full ownership, paid in full. Not shared. Not yours, Ruva. Mine." A hush fell over the room. Ruva's grin faltered. She looked around, realizing that everyone could now see the truth. Her face went pale, lips trembling. The guests shifted uncomfortably, whispering to each other as Ruva's confidence began to crumble right before their eyes. Samaya took a deep breath, letting her calm authority fill the room. "I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to shout. The papers speak for themselves. This is my home, my name, my life. I built this, and no one can take it from me." Ruva shrank back, speechless, as the room that once celebrated her audacity now watched her humiliation. Samaya stood tall, a quiet smile on her lips, feeling the relief and power of finally being seen for her hard work, and of reclaiming what was always hers. Layla had just finished a long day at work and was looking forward to a quiet evening in her home at Cairo Meadows. But the moment she stepped inside, she sensed something was off. Boxes were stacked in the living room, furniture had been shifted, and her sister Imani was pacing back and forth, clearly waiting for her. "You need to move out," Imani said sharply, stopping in front of Layla. "I need this space for my new business." "The family agrees. It's better if you find somewhere else." Layla blinked, her heart tightening. She had anticipated conflict, but she refused to let anger take over. She took a slow, deep breath, keeping her voice calm. "Imani, sit down. We need to talk." Imani smirked, folding her arms. "There's nothing to talk about. This house isn't yours to keep. The family decided." Layla didn't interrupt. Instead, she walked to her desk, opened a drawer, and carefully pulled out a fireproof folder. The room seemed to still as she returned to the living room. Imani's smirk faltered when Layla placed the folder on the coffee table and slowly opened it. Inside was the property title. Layla's full legal name was stamped in gold letters, official and unchangeable. "Imani," Layla said softly but firmly, "this house belongs to me. My name is on the title. Fully paid, fully mine." The color drained from Imani's face. Her fake confidence, the bravado she had carried since she entered, collapsed like a house of cards. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. The guests who had been quietly observing, other family members, shifted uncomfortably, sensing that the truth had just landed hard. Layla kept her gaze steady. "You can have your business anywhere," she added gently. "But this home, this space belongs to me. Always has. Always will." Imani looked around, realizing the room had turned against her. Family members whispered among themselves, confused and shocked, finally demanding answers. Layla's calm, quiet authority filled the space. She didn't need to argue or yell. The papers spoke louder than words ever could. For the first time, Imani understood she had overstepped. Layla stood tall, the weight of her hard work and perseverance reflected in her eyes. This was her home, her name, her life, and no one could take it away. The room, once filled with tension, now pulsed with respect for the sister who had quietly, confidently claimed what was hers. Adana had spent the whole day running errands, exhausted but happy to finally relax at her home in Suanzu Terrace. But when she walked through the front door, her heart sank. Her sister Kumba was there, surrounded by cousins, aunts and uncles, all buzzing with excitement, or so they thought. Boxes were stacked near the door, her furniture had been moved, and Kumba's smug grin made it clear what she was planning. "You need to leave," Kumba said loudly, standing in the middle of the living room. "This house was promised to me by Mom. Everyone agrees, you're out." Adana froze for a moment, shock and disbelief running through her. She could feel her chest tighten, her pulse racing, but she didn't let anger take over. She just nodded politely and said, "I'll be right back." She retreated to her bedroom and opened the top drawer of her nightstand. Inside was a folder she had kept hidden for years, the one piece of proof that no one could ever challenge. She carefully pulled out the legal transfer papers, signed, notarized, and dated 3 years before their mother had passed away. Every signature was clear, every stamp official. Her eyes softened as she held the papers. This was her truth, her proof, her home. Adana walked back into the living room slowly, holding the folder like a shield. The room fell quiet as she placed it on the coffee table and opened it. Her gaze swept across Kumba and the relatives who had confidently surrounded her moments ago. "These papers," Adana said calmly, her voice steady but strong, "show that this house was legally transferred to me 3 years ago. Signed by Mom, notarized, official. This house belongs to me, not anyone else." For a moment no one moved. Kumba's grin faltered, then disappeared entirely. Her relatives exchanged nervous glances, suddenly unsure of where they stood. The room, once filled with laughter and chatter, felt heavy with silence. Adana kept her eyes on her sister. "I don't need to argue. I don't need to shout. The law is clear. This is my home, my space, my life. No one can take it from me." Kumba opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. The confidence she had carried in moments before collapsed under the weight of undeniable truth. Adana stood tall, feeling a wave of relief and quiet triumph. Her home, her sanctuary, was hers alone, and now everyone else had to face the truth. Kira had been enjoying a quiet morning in Wenzi Heights when she heard loud trucks pulling up outside. Curious, she looked out the window and froze. Her sister Nadia had arrived, with a big moving truck, several workers, and a determined glare that made Kira's stomach twist. "This is mine," Nadia shouted before Kira even opened the door. "This house was always meant for the older sibling. You've had it long enough. Time to take it back." Kira's hands trembled, but she forced herself to stay calm. She didn't argue. She didn't yell. Instead, she pulled out her phone and started recording everything. The workers moving boxes, Nadia barking orders, and the neighbors gathering at their fences, whispering and taking in the chaos. She knew this moment could decide everything. Nadia stomped toward Kira, pointing and waving her arms. "Pack your things. You don't belong here. I am the rightful owner." Kira walked past the commotion, her expression steady. She went straight to the living room safe, opened it carefully, and pulled out the lawyer-stamped deed. Her name was on it, clear and official, with the purchase date months before Nadia had even returned from abroad. Every word screamed the truth. This house belonged to Kira, legally and completely. She placed the deed on the coffee table and looked Nadia directly in the eyes. "This house is mine," Kira said, her voice calm but firm. "I bought it, paid for it, and it's in my name. Everything here belongs to me." The workers froze, glancing at the papers. Nadia tried to shout orders, but they hesitated, shaking their heads. "Sorry, ma'am," one finally said. "We can't do that. The deed says otherwise." Nadia's face went pale. Her confidence, which had seemed unshakable just moments ago, began to crumble. The neighbors watching from their windows and gates murmured in shock, some even clapping quietly at Kira's victory. Kira took a deep breath, feeling relief wash over her. She had stayed calm, collected and firm, and the law was on her side. Nadia's meltdown unfolded before the neighborhood, her anger turning into disbelief. Kira smiled softly, knowing this house, her hard work, and her peace were safe. She had won without raising her voice. Her sister's arrogance had simply collided with the truth. Sifa had just returned home to Kafui Glen after a long day, expecting the comfort of her own space. But the moment she stepped inside, her heart sank. Her sister Nima was there, standing proudly in the middle of the living room, surrounded by scattered clothes, tipped-over cushions, and Sifa's belongings piled on the floor. "You need to leave," Nima said, her voice sharp and cold. "This place isn't yours. You're just renting life here. The family agrees. I should be living here, not you." Sifa felt her chest tighten. Anger and disbelief bubbled up, but she forced herself to take a deep breath. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply turned and walked calmly to her bedroom. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the thick binder she kept hidden in the closet, labeled clearly ownership and assets. This was her proof, the one thing that no one could ever take from her. She flipped through the pages carefully, stopping at the one that mattered most, the government registration number for the house. Every detail was perfect, official, and undeniable. Sifa walked back into the living room, her steps steady. Nima watched her, a smug grin still on her face, thinking she had already won. Sifa placed the binder on the coffee table and opened it slowly. Her eyes met Nima's as she flipped to the page with the registration number. "This," Sifa said, her voice calm but full of authority, "is my house. Fully paid, fully registered, fully mine. In my name alone." Nima's jaw dropped. The color drained from her face. She stumbled backward, unable to believe what she was seeing. The confidence she had carried in like armor shattered instantly. Sifa didn't need to shout. She didn't need to argue. The truth was right there in black and white, undeniable and official. Nima's arrogance crumbled as she realized she had overstepped, and the scattered relatives who had started gathering at the doorway suddenly fell silent, staring at the papers and the stunned woman before them. Sifa took a deep breath, a small smile spreading across her face. Her home, her life, her hard work, all of it was safe, and she had claimed it without raising her voice. Nima could say whatever she wanted, but the binder spoke louder than any argument. For the first time that day, Sifa felt completely in control, completely vindicated, and completely at peace. Tandy had been looking forward to a peaceful evening at home in Rongo Valley, but that calm disappeared the moment she heard her sister Amara's voice booming through the house. She followed the sound into the living room and froze. Amara had somehow gathered relatives, friends, and even a few neighbors, insisting on a family meeting right in Tandy's home. "You don't deserve this house," Amara announced, her voice loud and commanding. "It's too big for you. You should leave. The family agrees. You can't stay here." Tandy felt her chest tighten. Hurt, anger, and disbelief surged inside her, but she didn't respond with yelling or pleading. She simply nodded politely, excused herself for a moment, and walked to her study. The room was quiet except for her own steady breathing. She opened her safe and carefully pulled out a folder she had kept hidden, the one that proved everything, her approved building plans stamped and signed, along with bank receipts showing every payment she had made herself. With calm determination, Tandy walked back into the living room. The chatter quieted as she laid the papers on the table, flipping them open so everyone could see. She let her eyes meet Amara's and said softly but firmly, "This house was built by me, paid for by me, and approved officially. Every brick, every detail is mine, fully mine." The room went silent. The relatives who had been nodding along with Amara's claims now shifted uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. Amara's confident posture began to falter. She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. The evidence was clear, undeniable, and official. Tandy watched as Amara's face drained of color. Her smirk vanished, replaced with shock and frustration. For the first time, everyone could see the truth. Amara had no claim, no right, no power here. Humiliation washed over Amara as she finally realized she had been exposed in front of the whole family. Without another word, Amara stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was heavy but filled with a sense of justice. Tandy took a deep breath, relief and quiet triumph flooding her chest. She had never raised her voice, never begged, never shouted. Yet, with calm confidence and undeniable proof, she had reclaimed her home and her dignity. For the first time that evening, she felt completely at peace, standing in the house that was rightfully hers. Nalia had been away for a short trip, looking forward to coming home to Makuzi Gardens. But when she arrived, her stomach sank. The front door was locked, and a note was stuck to it. Her sister Farai had changed the locks, claiming, "The eldest siblings inherit everything. This house is mine now." Nalia's chest tightened, and anger boiled beneath the surface, but she forced herself to stay calm. She didn't panic, and she didn't yell. Instead, she calmly called a trusted locksmith, explaining the situation. Within the hour they arrived together, and Nalia watched as the locksmith opened the door legally, her hands steady, her mind focused. Stepping inside, Nalia felt a mix of relief and determination. Her home had been violated, her personal space invaded, but she was ready to take back what was hers. She walked straight to the living room where Farai was already waiting, arms crossed, smirking as if she had already won. "Farai," Nalia said softly, her voice calm but firm, "I think we need to clear something up." She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. The room fell quiet as she laid the papers on the table. Inside was the court order, the legal document proving Nalia was the rightful owner of the house, with her name written clearly and officially. "This house," Nalia said, her eyes meeting Farai's, "belongs to me." "Right. Fully legal. No one else has a claim. And changing the locks doesn't change that." For a moment Farai froze. Her face drained of color. Her confident smirk faltered, replaced with disbelief. She reached for the papers, but Nalia held them firmly. The neighbors, who had gathered outside when they heard the commotion, peeked through windows and gates, watching the scene unfold. Murmurs spread as they realized the truth. Tears welled up in Farai's eyes. She sank into a chair, unable to speak, her plan collapsing right in front of everyone. The smugness, the arrogance, the false confidence, all gone in an instant. Nalia stayed calm, her chest rising and falling steadily, feeling a wave of relief and triumph. Her home, her hard work, her peace of mind, it was all intact. The neighbors whispered among themselves, witnessing the complete turnaround. Nalia smiled softly, knowing she had reclaimed her space without shouting, without fighting. The law and her perseverance had spoken louder than any claim or trick, and her house was finally safe, hers and hers alone. Mirembe had just finished a long day when she returned home to Kariba Crest, expecting the quiet of her own space. But before she could even step inside, her sister Sonyu was there, arms crossed, shouting at her, "Pack your bags. This property belongs to the family, not to failures like you." Mirembe froze for a moment, feeling a mix of shock, hurt, and anger. Her bags had already been dragged outside, her things tossed around. But instead of yelling back or arguing, she took a deep breath. Calmly, she walked past Sonyu and went to her car. Everyone watching, neighbors, relatives, even passers-by, whispered among themselves. Mirembe returned carrying a sealed envelope. She placed it carefully on the coffee table and opened it slowly, deliberately. Inside were the documents she had kept hidden, the official deed, tax papers, and insurance papers. Every single one listed her full legal name, clear and undeniable. Sonyu leaned forward, her voice faltering. What is that?" Mirembe looked at her sister steadily. "This is my house," she said, her voice calm but full of authority. "Everything here is in my name, paid for, insured, legal. Not yours. Not the family's. Mine." Sonyu froze, her smirk fading, her confidence crumbling instantly. The room went silent. The neighbors and relatives who had gathered stared in shock as the truth sank in. For once, Sonyu had no power, no words, no plan that could override the law. Mirembe straightened, feeling a wave of quiet triumph. She didn't need to shout, didn't need to fight. The envelope spoke for her. Sonyu's anger turned to disbelief and humiliation as she realized this time she was the one who had to leave. Mirembe smiled softly, relieved and victorious. Her home, her hard work, and her peace were finally secure. She had stood firm, stayed calm, and let the truth and the law win. This was her space, her life, her victory, and no one could take it away.